The sharp crack of a leather whip cut through the cold dawn air as Willow Morgan stumbled across the muddy farmyard, her threadbare dress offering little protection against the biting Montana winter of 1885. Her father's voice, thick with whiskey and rage, followed her like a shadow as she made her way toward the pig pen where she'd spent every night for the past month. "You ain't nothing but a burden, girl. Not worth the food you eat," Thomas Morgan bellowed from the porch of their dilapidated homestead. "Sleep with the pigs where you belong." Willow, 20 years old with eyes that had once sparkled with dreams now dulled by years of mistreatment, didn't look back. She'd learned that responding only invited more cruelty. Instead, she clutched the thin blanket she'd managed to hide from her father's latest purge of her possessions and pushed open the wooden gate to the pen where 5 large sows grunted in greeting. "At least you're happy to see me," she whispered to the animals as she made her way to the small corner she'd cleared of muck, where a pile of relatively clean straw awaited her. This was her bed now, had been since her father had decided her room would better serve as storage for his growing collection of whiskey bottles. Little did Willow know that by the next full moon, her life would change forever, beginning with a chance encounter with a stranger whose kindness would seem as foreign to her as the concept of being called "my love." Chapter 1. The breaking point. 3 weeks later, Willow awoke to the familiar sounds and smells of the pig pen. The early spring sun was just beginning to peek over the distant mountains, casting long shadows across the Morgan property. Their once prosperous ranch had fallen into disrepair after her mother's death 5 years ago, victim to her father's growing dependence on alcohol and gambling. Willow stretched her aching back and brushed straw from her long auburn hair. She had exactly 1 hour to fetch water from the creek, start breakfast, and make herself as presentable as possible before her father woke, demanding his morning coffee. The routine was etched into her bones, as familiar as the constant hunger and bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companions. As she filled the buckets at the creek that bordered their property, Willow caught her reflection in the still water. Beneath the dirt and exhaustion, she could still see traces of her mother's beauty-high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes the color of summer sage. Her mother had always told her she was destined for greater things than this hardscrabble existence, but those dreams had died alongside Martha Morgan after a brutal winter fever. Back at the house, Willow stoked the kitchen fire and put the coffee on to boil. Her father's snores still rumbled from his bedroom, giving her a few precious moments of peace. She used them to wash her face and hands, comb through her tangled hair, and change into her cleanest dress, though clean was relative when one slept with pigs. "Girl, where's my coffee?" The familiar shout made her jump, sloshing hot liquid over her hands. She bit back a cry of pain. "Coming, father," she called, pouring a mug of the strong black brew and carrying it carefully to his bedroom. Thomas Morgan sat on the edge of his bed, his once handsome face now bloated and red, his clothes wrinkled from being slept in. He snatched the mug from her hands without acknowledgement and drank deeply. "There's a town meeting today," he grumbled, "about the railroad coming through. Might be able to sell some land if the price is right." Willow's heart skipped. The small ranch was all they had left. "But father, if you sell the land—" The back of his hand connected with her cheek before she could finish, sending her stumbling against the wall. "Don't you question me, girl. This is my property, and I'll do with it what I please." Willow touched her stinging cheek, tasting blood where her teeth had cut into her inner lip. "Yes, father. I'm sorry. Get breakfast ready. I'm heading into town after. You stay here and muck out the barn." As she prepared a simple meal of cornmeal mush and the last of their bacon, Willow's mind raced. If her father sold their land to the railroad, what would become of them? Of her? The ranch, despite its sorry state, was the only home she'd ever known. After breakfast, Thomas Morgan hitched their old mare to the wagon and departed for Pinewood, the nearest town, 15 miles away. He didn't bother to tell Willow when he'd return. Could be nightfall or it could be days, depending on how the poker games at the saloon went. Alone at last, Willow went about her chores with mechanical efficiency. She fed the remaining livestock 3 cows, the pigs, and a handful of chickens that had somehow survived her father's trades for whiskey. She mended fences and hauled water. By mid-afternoon, her body ached from the unrelenting labor, but the barn was clean, and the animals tended. It was then that she made a decision that had been forming in the corners of her mind for months. She wouldn't continue to live this way. If her father returned with news that he'd sold their land, she would leave. She had no plan beyond that, no destination in mind, but surely any future would be better than remaining here, sleeping with pigs and serving as her father's punching bag. With new resolve, Willow went to the house and found her mother's old carpetbag, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in what used to be her bedroom. Into it, she placed her spare dress, her mother's hairbrush, a small rag doll from her childhood, and the locket containing a tiny portrait of her mother. These meager possessions represented the sum total of her life's treasures. The sound of approaching hoofbeats sent her heart racing. Her father wasn't due back yet, it was too early. Hastily, she shoved the carpetbag back into its hiding place and smoothed her dress, preparing to greet whoever was arriving. Through the window, she saw not her father's wagon but a single rider on a magnificent chestnut stallion. The man sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders and straight back speaking of confidence and strength. As he dismounted, Willow noticed his clothes-quality denims, a clean plaid shirt, and a well-worn leather vest. A cowboy, but not the rough sort that sometimes passed through looking for work or trouble. Gathering her courage, Willow stepped onto the porch. "Can I help you, sir?" The man removed his hat, revealing thick hair the color of dark honey and eyes as blue as a summer sky. "Afternoon, miss. Name's Hunter Davis. I'm looking for Thomas Morgan." "He's gone to town," Willow replied, keeping her distance. Experience had taught her to be wary of strangers, especially men. "May I ask your business with him?" Hunter Davis studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering on the fresh bruise blooming on her cheek. Something flickered in his eyes, concern, perhaps, or anger, but his voice remained steady. "I've come about buying some cattle. I'm starting a ranch about 20 miles north of here, and I heard Morgan might be looking to sell some stock." Willow almost laughed at the irony. "There's not much stock left to sell, Mr. Davis, but my father should return by evening. You're welcome to wait, though I can't offer much in the way of hospitality." Hunter nodded, his eyes taking in the dilapidated state of the ranch. "Thank you, Miss Morgan. I don't mean to impose, but my horse could use some rest and water. Of course, the trough is by the barn. I'll show you." As they walked across the yard, Willow felt his eyes on her, not in the leering way she'd experienced from other men, but with a quiet concern that made her uncomfortable in its unfamiliarity. "Have you lived here long, Miss Morgan?" he asked as he led his horse to water. "All my life," she answered simply. "And it's just you and your father?" Willow nodded. "My mother passed 5 years ago." "I'm sorry to hear that." His voice carried genuine sympathy. "Must be hard running a ranch with just the two of you." Something about his gentle manner made Willow lower her guard slightly. "It's not much of a ranch anymore. Father's been selling off pieces bit by bit." Hunter's brow furrowed. "That explains the state of things. No offense meant, miss." "None taken, Mr. Davis. I'm well aware of our circumstances." A sudden commotion from the road drew their attention. Thomas Morgan's wagon approached at a dangerous speed, the old mare pushing well beyond her usual pace. Even from a distance, Willow could see her father was in one of his rages. "That's my father now," she said, her voice dropping. "You might want to wait until tomorrow to discuss business." He doesn't appear to be in a favorable mood. Hunter studied her face, noticing how she seemed to shrink at the sight of the approaching wagon. "Are you afraid of him, Miss Morgan?" The directness of his question startled her. "Mr. Davis." Before she could formulate a response, her father's wagon skidded to a halt in the yard. Thomas Morgan jumped down, nearly falling in his obvious drunkenness. His bloodshot eyes fixed first on his daughter, then on the stranger beside her. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, staggering forward. "And what are you doing with my daughter?" Hunter stepped forward, positioning himself subtly between Willow and her father. "Hunter Davis, sir. I came about purchasing some cattle. Your daughter was kind enough to let me wait for your return." Thomas snorted, the smell of whiskey rolling off him in waves. "Cattle? I got no cattle to sell you, boy. Railroad men just bought every damn inch of this worthless land. We're clearing out by the end of the month." Willow felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "You sold the ranch?" she whispered. Her father turned his bleary gaze on her. "Damn right I did. Got enough to start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere without the memories of your mother haunting every corner." He spat on the ground. "Now get in the house and pack whatever's worth taking. Rest can burn for all I care." "But this is our home," Willow protested, forgetting herself in her shock. Thomas Morgan's face darkened. "You questioning me again, girl?" He raised his hand, and Willow flinched, preparing for the blow. It never came. Hunter's hand shot out, catching Thomas's wrist in midair. "I don't think that's necessary, Mr. Morgan." For a moment, the yard was silent except for the sounds of the animals and the heavy breathing of the three humans locked in this tableau of conflict. Then Thomas yanked his arm free, fury replacing momentary surprise. "Get off my property," he snarled at Hunter. "And you," he turned to Willow, "get in the house before I really lose my temper." Hunter didn't move. "I think Miss Morgan might be safer coming with me." Thomas laughed, an ugly sound devoid of humor. "You want her? The useless girl can't cook worth a damn, and she's got a mouth on her." "But she's my daughter, and she goes where I say." "I believe the lady should decide for herself," Hunter replied, his calm voice belying the tension evident in his stance. Willow stood frozen, caught between the only life she'd known, however miserable, and the unknown represented by this stranger with kind eyes. Her father made the decision for her, lunging forward and grabbing her arm with bruising force. "She's staying with me." What happened next occurred so quickly Willow barely registered it. Hunter moved with the fluid grace of a man accustomed to physical conflict. One moment her father was dragging her toward the house. The next, he was on his knees in the dirt, Hunter's fist having connected solidly with his jaw. "Miss Morgan," Hunter said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "I suggest you gather whatever belongings you wish to take. I don't think it's safe for you here anymore." Willow stared at her father, who was now sprawled in the dirt, momentarily stunned. The decision crystallized in her mind with sudden clarity. "I'll need just a minute," she said, then hurried into the house. She retrieved her mother's carpetbag from its hiding place and added a few more items: a small jar of preserves, a loaf of bread, and the little money she'd managed to secretly save over the years, hidden in the pages of her mother's Bible. Less than 5 minutes later, she emerged from the house to find Hunter standing guard over her father, who was now sitting up, cursing and holding his jaw. "You ungrateful little," Thomas began when he saw her with the bag. "Enough," Hunter cut him off. "Miss Morgan is leaving of her own free will. I suggest you let her go peacefully." "Take her then," Thomas spat. "She'll be back when she realizes nobody wants damaged goods." Willow flinched at the cruel words but lifted her chin defiantly. "Goodbye, father," she said quietly, surprised at the steadiness of her own voice. Hunter helped her mount his horse, then swung up behind her. As they rode away from the only home she'd ever known, Willow didn't look back. She didn't see her father stagger to his feet, didn't hear his final curses fading in the distance. All she felt was the solid presence of the man behind her and a strange, terrifying sense of freedom. Chapter 2. Sanctuary. The rhythmic movement of the horse beneath her and the warm presence of Hunter at her back lulled Willow into a state of numb detachment as they rode away from the Morgan ranch. The countryside passed in a blur of early spring green and brown, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the rolling Montana landscape. "Are you all right, Miss Morgan?" Hunter's voice, close to her ear, startled her from her trance-like state. Willow realized she'd been silent for nearly an hour. "Yes, no, I don't know," she answered honestly. "I've never left home before." She felt rather than saw his nod. "It's about another hour to my place. We can rest there, and tomorrow you can decide what you want to do next." The simplicity of his statement that she could decide her own future hit Willow with unexpected force. Her entire life had been dictated by her father's whims and demands. The concept of choice was as foreign as the stars. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. "You don't know me." Hunter was quiet for a moment. "I know enough," he finally said. "I know no one deserves to be treated the way your father was treating you. The rest we can figure out along the way." His answer should have unsettled her. It offered no concrete promises, no clear path forward, yet Willow found it strangely comforting in its honesty. This wasn't a fairy tale rescue. It was one human being offering another a moment's respite and the dignity of choice. As the sun began to set, they crested a hill, and Hunter's ranch came into view. Unlike the Morgan property, with its air of neglect and decay, the Davis ranch spoke of care and intention. The main house was modest but solidly built of sturdy logs with a wide porch. A large barn, corral, and several outbuildings completed the picture of a working cattle operation. In the distance, Willow could see a small herd grazing in a fenced pasture. "It's not much yet," Hunter said as they approached, "but it's getting there." "It's beautiful," Willow replied, and meant it. The ranch had an order and purpose to it that appealed to her practical nature. A ranch hand emerged from the barn as they rode into the yard, a lean, weathered man with silver-streaked black hair who looked to be in his 50s. "Frank," Hunter called in greeting. "This is Miss Willow Morgan. She'll be staying with us for a while." If Frank was surprised by the unexpected guest, he didn't show it. He merely touched the brim of his hat respectfully. "Madam, supper's almost ready if you're hungry." Hunter dismounted and reached up to help Willow down. His hands at her waist were strong but gentle, and she was acutely aware of how long it had been since anyone had touched her with kindness. "Frank's been with me since I started this place," Hunter explained as he led her toward the house. "Best ranch hand and cook in the territory, though don't tell him I said so. His head's big enough already." Frank snorted good-naturedly as he took the reins of Hunter's horse. "Only thing big around here is the boss's stories. Go on in, Miss Morgan. There's stew and biscuits keeping warm." The interior of Hunter's home was as surprising as the exterior had been impressive. Where Willow had expected the Spartan quarters of a bachelor, she found instead a space that, while simple, had been arranged with care. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a solid table, comfortable chairs, and bookshelves filled with volumes that suggested their owner was more than just a cattleman. "You can wash up there," Hunter said, indicating a basin with fresh water on a stand near the kitchen area. "I'll get us some supper." Grateful for the chance to remove the dust of travel and collect her thoughts, Willow splashed water on her face and hands. The cool liquid was refreshing against her skin, and she wished fleetingly for a proper bath, something she hadn't enjoyed in months. When she turned back, Hunter had set the table with bowls of rich-smelling stew, a plate of golden biscuits, and 2 mugs of coffee. The normalcy of the scene, a proper meal at a proper table, brought unexpected tears to Willow's eyes, which she blinked away quickly. "Please sit," Hunter said, pulling out a chair for her. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Willow savoring the hearty stew, the first real meal she'd had in days. Finally, Hunter spoke. "I want you to know you're safe here, Miss Morgan. You're welcome to stay as long as you need to figure out your next steps." Willow set down her spoon. "That's very generous, Mr. Davis, but I can't impose on your kindness without offering something in return. I can cook, clean, mend. I'm used to hard work." Hunter studied her thoughtfully. "I don't doubt that for a minute, and I won't turn down help if you're offering it freely. But I want to be clear, your stay here isn't conditional on work. You're not trading one form of servitude for another." His perceptiveness was unsettling. Willow looked down at her bowl, uncomfortable with the way he seemed to read her unspoken fears. "I don't know what else to do," she admitted quietly. "I have no family, no friends close enough to turn to. I've never been more than 20 miles from my father's ranch." "Then perhaps this is an opportunity," Hunter suggested. "A chance to decide what you want for yourself, without anyone else's demands shaping that decision." Willow looked up at him, trying to discern his motives. Men, in her experience, always wanted something. But Hunter's blue eyes held nothing but sincerity. "Why do you care what happens to me?" she asked directly. Hunter took a sip of his coffee before answering. "My mother was in a situation not unlike yours," he said after a moment. "Married to a man who used his fists more freely than his words. I was 14 when she finally found the courage to leave, taking me with her. We were lucky she had a brother in Colorado who took us in until she could support us by working as a seamstress." He set down his mug, his expression somber. "She died 3 years ago, but not before seeing me established here with land of my own. I promised her I'd never turn away from someone in need, the way so many turned away when she needed help." The simple honesty of his story touched something deep within Willow. For the first time since leaving her father's ranch, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. "Thank you for telling me that," she said softly, "and for helping me today." Hunter nodded, then changed the subject to lighter matters: the spring calving, his plans for expanding the herd, the unpredictable Montana weather. By the time they finished the meal, Willow's exhaustion was overwhelming her. "You look dead on your feet," Hunter observed. "Let me show you where you can sleep." He led her to a small but clean bedroom off the main living area. "This is yours for as long as you need it," he said, lighting a lamp on the bedside table. "There are extra blankets in the chest if you get cold." Willow stared at the bed with its crisp sheets and patchwork quilt. After weeks of sleeping in straw, the sight of a rail bed nearly undid her composure. "Thank you," she managed, clutching her carpetbag to her chest like a shield. Hunter seemed to sense her overwhelm. "Get some rest, Miss Morgan. Things often look clearer in the morning." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "And Willow, you don't have to sleep with the pigs anymore. Not ever again." After he left, closing the door softly behind him, Willow sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the smooth quilt. His use of her given name and his gentle assurance broke something loose inside her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry, not the quiet, hidden tears she'd become accustomed to, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the very core of her being. When the storm of emotion finally passed, Willow changed into her nightdress, washed her face again in the basin provided, and climbed into the bed. The mattress yielded to her weight, cradling her tired body in a way that felt almost decadent after weeks of hard ground and straw. As she drifted towards sleep, Willow realized she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope, small and fragile as a newly hatched chick, but unmistakable. Tomorrow might bring new challenges, but for tonight, she was safe, warm, and for the first time in memory treated with dignity. The thought followed her into dreams that, for once, weren't filled with fear. Chapter 3. New beginnings. Willow woke to sunlight streaming through actual curtains, not the dirty rags that had covered the windows in her father's house. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. Her father's revelation about selling the ranch, the confrontation, and Hunter Davis riding away with her. She sat up slowly, taking in the simple but comfortable room in the morning light. A washstand with a pitcher and basin, a small chest of drawers, and a hook on the wall for clothes made up the furnishings. Someone Hunter, presumably, had left a stack of folded clothing on the chest, topped with a note. Climbing out of bed, Willow picked up the paper. In a surprisingly neat hand, Hunter had written, "These belong to my mother. They might be a bit large, but cleaner than what you have. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen for breakfast. I'm out checking the herd and will return mid-morning. HD." Willow fingered the clothing, a simple blue cotton dress, undergarments, and a woolen shawl. All were worn but clean and of better quality than her own threadbare garments. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. After washing and dressing in her borrowed clothes, which were indeed a bit large but felt wonderfully clean, Willow made her way to the kitchen. The house was quiet, with no sign of Hunter or Frank. Taking Hunter at his word, she explored the pantry and found eggs, bacon, and flour to make biscuits. By the time she heard horses in the yard, Willow had not only prepared breakfast but had swept the floors and washed the previous night's dishes as well. She couldn't help herself. Idleness made her anxious, and the familiar tasks helped settle her nerves in this unfamiliar place. The door opened, and Hunter entered, bringing with him the smell of fresh air and horses. He stopped short at the sight of her at the stove, his expression a mix of surprise and something else she couldn't quite identify. "Good morning," she said, suddenly self-conscious. "I hope you don't mind I made breakfast." Hunter removed his hat, hanging it on a peg by the door. "Mind? I can't remember the last time I came home to the smell of fresh biscuits." "Thank you." His simple gratitude warmed her more than it should have. "It's the least I could do," she replied, turning back to the stove to hide her flushed cheeks. "The clothes fit all right?" he asked, washing his hands at the basin. "Yes, thank you. It was very kind of you to think of it." They settled at the table, and Willow served the breakfast she'd prepared. As they ate, Hunter told her about the morning's work checking on pregnant cows, mending fences, the usual business of ranching. His manner was easy, treating her like an equal rather than a charity case or a servant, which she found both refreshing and disconcerting. "I was thinking," Hunter said as they finished their meal, "there's a supply wagon heading to town tomorrow. If you'd like, you could ride along and see if there's work to be had in Pinewood. The hotel sometimes needs help, and Mrs. Peterson at the general store was saying she could use an assistant." Willow set down her coffee cup. "You're trying to help me find employment?" "I'm trying to help you find options," Hunter clarified. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you like, but I understand if you'd prefer more independence." The consideration in his offer that he was thinking not just of her immediate needs but of her future autonomy was something Willow hadn't experienced before. "Thank you," she said softly. "I think I would like to see what opportunities might be available in town." Hunter nodded. "Good." In the meantime, Frank mentioned the vegetable garden needs tending if you're inclined toward outdoor work. Or there's mending to be done. Bachelor ranchers aren't known for their skill with a needle. Willow smiled, perhaps her first genuine smile in months. "I can do both. I enjoy gardening, actually. My mother taught me how to coax even the most reluctant seeds into producing. Then the garden is yours to command," Hunter said with a matching smile that transformed his rugged features into something that made Willow's heart beat a little faster. Over the next day, Willow threw herself into the tasks at hand with the same determination that had helped her survive years under her father's roof. She weeded and turned the soil in the garden, preparing it for spring planting. She mended shirts and socks that had been tossed in a basket, apparently awaiting attention for some time. She even helped Frank prepare supper, learning that the gruff older man was indeed an excellent cook who had picked up his skills during his years as a chuck wagon cook on cattle drives. Through it all, she found herself watching Hunter when he thought she wasn't looking. There was something compelling about the quiet competence with which he ran his ranch. He was firm but fair with Frank and the two other hands who worked for him, clear in his expectations but quick with praise for work well done. He treated his animals with respect and gentle handling, and he treated Willow with a courtesy that felt as nourishing to her starved spirit as food to a hungry body. The following morning, Willow rode to town with Frank, who was going to purchase supplies and deliver mail. Pinewood was a small but growing settlement, one main street lined with businesses, a church, a schoolhouse, and scattered residences spreading outward. "Town's changing," Frank commented as they drove the wagon down the dusty main street. "Railroad coming through has folks thinking we'll be the next big thing. Lot of new faces lately." Willow nodded, taking in the sights. The hotel Frank had mentioned was a 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch and fresh paint. The general store occupied a prime corner location, its windows displaying goods from fabric to farming tools. "I'll drop you here," Frank said, pulling up in front of the store. "Take your time. I've got deliveries and won't be ready to head back until mid-afternoon. We can meet at the hotel restaurant for dinner before we go." Gathering her courage, Willow entered the general store. A bell tinkled overhead, and a plump, gray-haired woman looked up from where she was arranging bolts of fabric. "Good morning," the woman said cheerfully. "Can I help you find something?" "Actually," Willow began, "I heard you might be looking for assistance in the store. I'm interested in employment if the position is still available." The woman, Mrs. Peterson, Willow presumed, studied her with keen eyes. "You're new in town. Where are you staying?" "Currently at the Davis Ranch," Willow answered honestly. "Mr. Davis was kind enough to offer temporary accommodation while I look for work." Mrs. Peterson's expression softened slightly. "Hunter Davis is a good man. One of the few who pays his bills on time and doesn't try to haggle me down to nothing." She gestured for Willow to come closer. "What's your name, dear? And what experience do you have?" "Willow Morgan, madam. I don't have experience in a store specifically, but I can read, write, and cipher well. I'm a quick learner and not afraid of hard work." The older woman nodded thoughtfully. "Morgan. Any relation to Thomas Morgan, the drunk who just sold his place to the railroad?" Willow stiffened. "He's my father, yes." Mrs. Peterson's gaze grew speculative. "I heard some talk that he was heading to Wyoming, looking for mining work. Came in here 2 days ago, bought supplies, and was none too pleasant about it." The news that her father had left the territory sent a wave of relief through Willow. "Mrs. Peterson, I'll be direct. I left my father's house because it was no longer safe for me there. I'm looking to make my own way now." The older woman's face softened. "Good for you, child. Too many women stay in bad situations because they think they have no choice." She came around the counter. "Let me show you around the store. I can offer you $3 a week to start, with a room above the store if you need it. If things work out, we can discuss a raise." By the time Willow met Frank for the promised meal, she had secured not only employment but lodging as well. Mrs. Peterson Abigail, as she insisted Willow call her, had shown her the small but clean room above the store where previous assistants had lived. "You look pleased with yourself," Frank observed as they ate their dinner at the hotel restaurant. "I got the position at the store," Willow told him. I start next week. Mrs. Peterson is even providing a room. Frank nodded approvingly. Good for you. Though I expect the boss might be a bit disappointed you'll be moving to town so soon. Willow looked up sharply. What do you mean? The older man shrugged, cutting into his steak. Just that he seems to enjoy having you around. Place feels different with a woman's touch again. Unsure how to respond to this observation, Willow changed the subject, asking Frank about his years as a chuck wagon cook. His stories of cattle drives and cowboys kept them entertained through the meal, but his words about Hunter lingered in her mind during the ride back to the ranch. When they arrived, Hunter was in the corral, working with a young horse. Willow watched from the wagon as he moved with the animal, his body language calm and assured. There was something mesmerizing about the way man and beast communicated, a dance of mutual respect rather than dominance. How did it go in town? Hunter asked later as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Well, Willow replied, Mrs. Peterson offered me a position in her store, starting at $3 a week. There's a room above the shop where I can stay. Hunter was quiet for a moment. That's good news, he finally said. When do you start? Monday next week. I thought if it's not imposing too much I might stay here until then. I'd like to see the garden planted before I go. Of course, Hunter agreed quickly. Like I said, you're welcome here as long as you need. They sat in companionable silence as darkness crept across the land. The spring air held a chill, and Willow wrapped her borrowed shawl more tightly around her shoulders. Are you cold? Hunter asked. We could go inside. No, it's nice out here. Peaceful. Willow hesitated, then added, I never got to just sit and enjoy an evening at my father's. There was always more work to be done, or he was in one of his moods. What was your mother like? Hunter asked gently. If you don't mind my asking. The question opened a door inside Willow that had been closed for a long time. She was beautiful, she began softly. Not just in her appearance, though she was lovely. She had a way of finding beauty in everything, a wildflower growing through a crack in the rocks, the changing colors of the sky, the song of a bird at dawn. As she spoke, memories long suppressed rose to the surface. She taught me to read using her Bible and a book of poetry someone had given her as a girl. She'd been a schoolteacher before she married my father, and she made sure I learned everything she knew. She used to say education was the one thing no one could take from you. She sounds like a remarkable woman, Hunter said. Willow nodded, tears pricking at her eyes. She was. Everything changed after she died. Father had always had a temper, but she somehow managed to soften him. Without her. She trailed off, unable to continue. Hunter's hand came to rest gently on hers where it lay on the arm of her chair. I'm sorry you lost her, he said simply. The warmth of his hand sent a current through Willow that had nothing to do with the evening chill. Thank you, she whispered. They remained that way as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the night sky. Neither spoke, but something unspoken passed between them in that quiet moment, a connection that frightened and thrilled Willow in equal measure. Finally, Hunter withdrew his hand and stood. We should get some rest. Morning comes early on a ranch. As Willow prepared for bed that night, she found herself touching the spot on her hand where Hunter's had rested, trying to recapture the feeling of his skin against hers. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with gentleness that even this small contact felt momentous. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly look at the situation she found herself in. Hunter Davis was unlike any man she'd ever known, kind, respectful, seemingly without ulterior motives. But she wasn't naive enough to believe that would last. Men changed. Her father had been charming once, according to her mother. No, Willow decided as she slipped beneath the covers, the wisest course was to accept the job in town, establish her independence, and guard her heart against whatever these strange new feelings might be. She couldn't risk trading one form of dependency for another, no matter how appealing the package it came in. With that resolution firmly in mind, she closed her eyes and tried to ignore the small voice inside that whispered she might be making the biggest mistake of her life. Chapter 4. Unexpected feelings. The days leading up to Willow's departure for town established a rhythm that felt both natural and precarious. Each morning, she rose early to prepare breakfast before Hunter and Frank went out to work the ranch. The men would return mid-morning for coffee, then again at midday for dinner, the main meal. Afternoons found Willow in the garden, planting the seeds Hunter had purchased in town, or inside the house, bringing order to rooms that had clearly been maintained by men with little interest in domestic details. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch if the weather permitted, or by the fire if it didn't, talking about their days. Hunter proved to be well-read and thoughtful, often surprising Willow with his knowledge of literature and current events. He subscribed to newspapers from as far away as Chicago and Denver, and they would sometimes discuss the stories they contained. These conversations awakened something in Willow that had been dormant since her mother's death: an intellectual curiosity, a hunger for knowledge about the world beyond her limited experience. Hunter never made her feel ignorant when she asked questions. Instead, he seemed to appreciate her curiosity and willingness to learn. On the third day, as Willow was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, she became aware of being watched. Looking up, she found Hunter leaning against the corner of the house, his expression thoughtful. "Is something wrong?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. He shook his head. "Not at all. I was just thinking how right you look here, doing ordinary things, as if you belong." The simple observation sent a flush of warmth through her. "I've enjoyed being here," she admitted. "It's been healing." Hunter pushed away from the wall and came closer. "You don't have to leave, you know. The job in town, it's good to have options, but if you wanted to stay here, there's plenty of work to be done. I could pay you the same wage Mrs. Peterson offered." Willow's hands stilled on the damp shirt she was hanging. "Are you offering me employment, Mr. Davis?" "I'm offering you a choice," he corrected gently. "And I thought we'd moved past Mr. Davis's by now." She smoothed the fabric unnecessarily, buying time to collect her thoughts. "Hunter, then," she said, testing the familiarity of his given name on her tongue. "Why would you want me to stay? You have Frank to cook, and surely you can hire someone from town to tend the garden and do the mending." Hunter stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the clean scent of soap and leather that seemed to cling to him. "Maybe I enjoy your company," he said quietly. "Maybe the house feels more like a home with you in it." The words hung in the air between them, laden with implications Willow wasn't sure she was ready to face. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, "but I think it's best if I take the position in town. I need to know I can stand on my own, that I'm not simply trading one dependency for another." Though she hadn't explicitly referred to her father, understanding dawned in Hunter's eyes. "I see," he said, stepping back slightly. "I respect that, Willow. The offer remains open, should you ever change your mind." That evening at supper, Frank announced he would be riding to a neighboring ranch the next day to help with a difficult calving. "Jim Harper's got a heifer in trouble, and their regular hand broke his arm last week," he explained. "I'll be gone overnight most likely." Hunter nodded his understanding. "Give Jim my regards. Tell him if he needs more help to send word." After Frank retired for the night, Willow and Hunter sat by the fire, a comfortable silence between them as she mended a tear in one of his shirts, and he cleaned his revolver, a nightly ritual she'd observed since arriving. "May I ask you something?" Willow said, tying off a neat stitch. Hunter looked up from his task. "Of course. How did you come to have this ranch? You mentioned your mother was a seamstress, but this place." She gestured around them. It must have taken considerable resources to establish. Hunter set the gun aside and leaned back in his chair. My mother's brother, my uncle, was a successful merchant in Denver. When he died 10 years ago, he left everything to my mother and me. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to buy this land and some decent breeding stock. His expression grew distant. My mother never got to see the ranch. She died before I could get it established. But she knew it was my dream, and her brother's legacy made it possible. She would be proud of what you've built, Willow said softly. Hunter's eyes met hers, warm in the firelight. I like to think so. He paused, then asked, What about your dreams, Willow? Before all this, what did you want for your life? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. I'm not sure I allowed myself to dream, she admitted. After Mother died, it was just about surviving each day. And now, Willow considered the question seriously. Now, I suppose I want what most people want. Security, purpose. She hesitated, then added more quietly. Perhaps someday a family of my own, though I'm not sure I'd be any good at it, given my experience. I think you'd be wonderful, Hunter said with such conviction that Willow looked up in surprise. You have a capacity for kindness that hardship hasn't diminished. That's rare, Willow, and precious. His words touched something deep within her, a place that had been wounded by years of her father's cruelty. That Hunter could see something valuable in her, something worthy of nurturing, felt like a balm to those old hurts. Thank you, she whispered, not trusting her voice with more. The next day dawned clear and bright. Frank departed after breakfast, leaving Willow and Hunter alone on the ranch. The awareness of this new privacy created a subtle tension that Willow tried to ignore as she went about her usual tasks. By mid-morning, dark clouds were building on the horizon, and a cool wind had picked up, carrying the scent of rain. Hunter came in from checking the herd, his expression concerned. Storm's coming, he announced. Might be a bad one from the look of those clouds. We should secure everything in the yard. Together they worked to prepare for the approaching weather, bringing tools into the barn, ensuring the animals were safely sheltered, securing loose items that might blow away. As they finished, the first fat drops of rain began to fall, quickly becoming a steady downpour. They made it to the porch just as lightning split the sky, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. Willow jumped at the sound, and Hunter's hand came to rest reassuringly on her back. Just a spring storm, he said. But we'd best get inside before we're soaked through. In the house, Willow busied herself lighting lamps as the sky outside darkened to an ominous gray-green. The wind howled around the eaves, and rain lashed against the windows with increasing fury. I think we're in for a long afternoon, Hunter observed, stoking the fire higher against the sudden chill. Might as well make ourselves comfortable. The storm intensified as the hours passed. Hunter read aloud from one of his books, a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets that had belonged to his mother while Willow worked on her mending. The rich cadence of his voice reading the beautiful words created an intimacy that made her increasingly aware of him, not just as her benefactor but as a man. When a particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, Willow set aside her sewing. Should we be concerned? She asked. About the animals, I mean. Hunter closed the book, keeping his place with a finger. The barn is solid. They'll be fine as long as... A tremendous crash outside interrupted him. He was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. Damn, he muttered. The old oak by the corral. It's down, and it looks like it took part of the fence with it. Will the horses get out? Willow asked, joining him at the window. Not if I can help it, Hunter replied, already reaching for his coat and hat. I need to check the damage and make temporary repairs if necessary. I'm coming with you, Willow stated, grabbing her shawl. Hunter looked like he might argue, then nodded. Stay close to me. It's dangerous out there. The moment they stepped outside, Willow understood his concern. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet, and the rain fell in sheets so heavy she could barely see. Hunter took her hand, leading her toward the barn where the massive oak had indeed fallen, crushing a section of the corral fence. Inside the barn, the horses were nervous, moving restlessly in their stalls. Hunter quickly assessed the situation. The fence is compromised, but the barn itself is intact. We need to repair that section of fence before any of the stock decides to make a break for it. For the next hour, they worked side by side in the howling storm, securing boards across the gap left by the fallen tree. By the time they finished, they were both soaked to the skin and shivering with cold. That will hold until the storm passes, Hunter said, having to shout to be heard above the wind. Let's get back to the house before we catch our death. Back inside, Willow was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Her dress clung to her like a second skin, her hair hanging in sodden ropes around her face. You need to get out of those wet clothes, Hunter said, his own condition no better. Go change. I'll build up the fire. In her room, Willow peeled off the soaking garments with difficulty, her numb fingers struggling with buttons and ties. She dried herself as best she could and put on her nightdress and the woolen shawl Hunter had given her, lacking any other dry clothing. When she emerged, she found Hunter had also changed into dry clothes, canvas trousers, and a flannel shirt. He had built the fire up to a roaring blaze and was arranging blankets on chairs in front of it. To dry our things, he explained, taking her wet dress and hanging it carefully. Come sit by the fire. You're still shivering. Willow sank gratefully onto the hearth rug, extending her hands toward the warmth. Hunter disappeared briefly into the kitchen, returning with 2 mugs of something steaming. Coffee with a splash of whiskey, he said, handing her one. Medicinal purposes only. The hot liquid burned a path down her throat, but the warmth that spread through her was welcome. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside while the fire crackled cheerfully in the hearth. Thank you for your help out there, Hunter said eventually. Not many women would have ventured out in weather like this. Willow shrugged. I'm used to working in all conditions. On my father's ranch, the animals still needed tending regardless of the weather. Hunter studied her over the rim of his mug. You're quite remarkable, Willow Morgan. The simple compliment warmed her more than the fire or the whiskey-laced coffee. I'm just practical, she demurred. No, Hunter said, setting down his mug and moving to sit beside her on the hearth rug. It's more than that. You've endured things that would have broken many people, yet here you are still kind, still willing to see the good in the world. That takes courage. Willow looked down, uncomfortable with his praise. Or foolishness. Never that, Hunter said softly. His hand came up to gently tuck a strand of damp hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her breath catch. Willow, look at me, please. She raised her eyes to his, finding them filled with an emotion that made her heart race. Hunter, I know you're leaving in 2 days, he said, his voice low, and I respect your decision. But I need you to know something before you go. He took a deep breath. These past days with you have been the happiest I've known in a very long time. You've brought something back to this house and to me that I didn't even realize was missing. Willow felt tears prick at her eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Hunter assured her. I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I just wanted you to know that you've touched my life, Willow Morgan. And whatever you decide about your future, I will always be grateful for these days. The sincerity in his words undid her careful resolve. Without thinking, Willow leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that started as tentative, but quickly deepened as Hunter's arms came around her, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Hunter rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you hanging laundry in the sunshine," he admitted. Willow gave a shaky laugh. "I've never been kissed before." Hunter drew back slightly, his expression surprised. "Never." She shook her head. "My father kept me isolated. And after Mother died, I was too busy surviving to think about such things." A slow smile spread across Hunter's face. "Then I'm honored to be the first," he said softly. "And I hope very much not to be the last." Before Willow could respond, he kissed her again, more deeply this time, his hands tangling in her damp hair. She melted into his embrace, her own hands coming up to rest against his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. The storm outside seemed to mirror the one building within her, wild, unpredictable, and thrilling in its intensity. For the first time in her life, Willow felt truly alive, every nerve ending singing with awareness. When Hunter finally pulled away, his eyes were dark with desire, but his touch remained gentle. "I should stop," he said, his voice rough, "before I forget myself entirely." Willow nodded, though part of her wanted nothing more than to continue this newfound exploration. "Yes," she agreed breathlessly. "We should." But neither of them moved away. Instead, Hunter's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. "Willow," he whispered, and in that single word she heard a question, a promise and a plea. "I'm afraid," she admitted, voicing the fear that had been growing alongside these new feelings. "Not of you, but of this, of wanting something I'm not sure I can have." Hunter nodded in understanding. "I know. Believe me, I do. But sometimes the things most worth having are the ones that frighten us the most." He kissed her forehead softly. "Whatever happens next, know that I will never hurt you, Willow. That's a promise I can make without reservation." The conviction in his voice touched something deep within her, a place that had been wounded by years of her father's broken promises and casual cruelty. Hunter Davis was different. She felt that truth in her bones. But was she ready to trust that feeling? To build something on such a new and fragile foundation? As if sensing her internal struggle, Hunter stood and offered her his hand. "It's getting late, and we're both exhausted. We should get some rest." Willow allowed him to help her to her feet, aware of the warmth of his hand in hers, the strength in his grip. "Thank you," she said softly, "for understanding." Hunter smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in it. "Good night, Willow. Sleep well." That night, as the storm gradually subsided outside her window, Willow lay awake long into the night, replaying the events of the evening in her mind. The feel of Hunter's lips on hers, the safety she'd felt in his arms, the respect he'd shown by not pressing for more than she was ready to give. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly consider what staying might mean, not as Hunter's employee, but as something more. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Could she trust these feelings? Could she trust him? And perhaps most importantly, could she trust herself to recognize the difference between dependence and partnership? As dawn broke over the rain-washed landscape, Willow had come no closer to answers. But one thing was certain: her decision to leave for town had just become infinitely more complicated. Chapter 5. Crossroads. The morning after the storm dawned clear and bright, as if the tempest had washed the world clean. Willow woke early, her mind still full of the previous evening's events. She dressed carefully in one of the borrowed dresses, conscious that today was her last full day at the ranch before she was due to start her position in town. When she entered the kitchen, she found Hunter already there, preparing coffee. He looked up at her approach, his expression a mixture of warmth and uncertainty. "Good morning," he said. Did you sleep well? Eventually, Willow admitted, moving to help with breakfast preparations. The storm kept me awake for a while. Hunter nodded, though they both knew it wasn't just the weather that had caused her restlessness. Frank won't be back until this afternoon at the earliest, he said. I need to check on the livestock and assess any damage from the storm. Would you like to ride out with me after breakfast? The invitation surprised her. I'd like that, yes, but I should warn you I'm not much of a rider. Father never allowed me to handle the horses beyond basic care. I have a gentle mare that would suit you, Hunter assured her. And we won't go far. After a simple breakfast of oatmeal and coffee, Hunter saddled 2 horses, his own chestnut stallion and a dappled gray mare with a calm disposition. He helped Willow mount, his hands strong and sure at her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Just relax and move with her, he instructed as they set out. Daisy knows what she's doing even if you don't. They rode at a leisurely pace, Hunter pointing out landmarks and boundaries of his property. The land was beautiful in the aftermath of the storm, wildflowers dotting the green meadows, distant mountains standing sharp against the clear blue sky. How much land do you have? Willow asked as they paused atop a small rise that offered a panoramic view. 600 acres, give or take, Hunter replied. Not the biggest spread in the territory, but good grazing land with reliable water sources. Enough to build something worthwhile. He looked at her, his expression earnest. Something that could last generations with the right care. The implication in his words was clear, and Willow felt her cheeks warm. Before she could respond, Hunter pointed to a distant grove of trees. There's something I'd like to show you, if you're willing to ride a bit farther. Curious, Willow nodded her assent, and they continued on, descending the rise and following a clear stream that wound through the property. After about 20 minutes, they reached the grove Hunter had indicated, a stand of cottonwoods surrounding a small, clear pool where the stream widened. It's beautiful, Willow said as they dismounted. The spot was indeed lovely, secluded and peaceful, with wildflowers growing along the banks of the pool. I found this place the first day I rode this land, Hunter said, leading the horses to the water's edge to drink. I knew then that I wanted to build my ranch here, centered around this spot. He helped Willow spread a blanket he'd brought in his saddlebag, and they sat in the dappled shade of the trees. This is where I come when I need to think, Hunter continued, or when the silence of the house becomes too much. Willow looked at him curiously. Do you get lonely out here? Hunter considered the question. Sometimes, he admitted. I have Frank and the other hands, but it's not the same as having family. I've built something good here, but there are days when I wonder what it's all for if there's no one to share it with. The honesty of his answer touched Willow deeply. I understand loneliness, she said softly. Even when my father was physically present, I was alone in every way that mattered. Hunter's hand found hers on the blanket, his fingers intertwining with hers. We're quite the pair, aren't we? He said with a gentle smile. Both of us carrying our separate scars. Both of us trying to build something new from the pieces of the past. Willow looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. Hunter, she began hesitantly. About last night. I meant what I said, he interrupted softly. Every word. But I also meant it when I said I respect your decision. If you still want to go to town tomorrow, I'll take you myself. And if I don't? The words slipped out before Willow could stop them. Hunter's grip on her hand tightened slightly. Then you would make me the happiest man in the territory, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But Willow, I need you to be sure. I don't want you to stay out of obligation or gratitude. It wouldn't be that, she assured him quickly. These past days, they've shown me what life could be like. What I could be like when I'm not constantly afraid. She took a deep breath. But I'm still afraid, Hunter. Afraid of trusting again, of being vulnerable. What if I'm making another mistake? Hunter shifted to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. Willow, look at me, he said gently. When she raised her eyes to his, he continued, I can't promise that life will be perfect. Ranching is hard work, and there will be difficult times ahead regardless of what you decide. But I can promise you this. For as long as I draw breath, you will never again sleep with the pigs. You will never go hungry or cold or afraid if it is within my power to prevent it. Tears welled in Willow's eyes at the simple, heartfelt declaration. Why me? She whispered. You could have any woman you wanted. Because from the moment I saw you standing in that farmyard, with your chin up despite everything, I recognized something in you that called to me, Hunter replied. A strength that matches my own. A capacity for love that years of mistreatment couldn't destroy. He reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. And because when you smile, really smile, like you did last night by the fire, it feels like watching the sun rise after the longest night. Willow's heart seemed to expand in her chest, making it difficult to breathe. No one had ever spoken to her this way, as if she were precious and worthy of such devotion. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything now, Hunter assured her. Take today. Think about what you truly want. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. They spent the rest of the morning by the pool, talking of everyday things, the spring planting, the new calves, books they had read. Hunter told her stories of his early days on the ranch, the mistakes he'd made and the lessons he'd learned. Willow found herself laughing more than she had in years, relaxing into a comfort with him that felt both novel and somehow familiar, as if her soul recognized his. As they rode back to the ranch in the early afternoon, Willow's mind was a tumult of conflicting thoughts and emotions. Part of her yearned to accept what Hunter was offering, not just a home, but a partnership, a chance at happiness she'd never dared to imagine for herself. Another part, scarred by years of her father's cruelty, whispered warnings about trusting too quickly, about exchanging one form of dependency for another. They arrived back at the ranch to find Frank had returned early and was unloading supplies from his wagon. Storm do much damage? He asked as Hunter helped Willow dismount. Nothing serious, Hunter replied. Lost the old oak by the corral, but we managed to secure the fence last night. Frank nodded, then looked between them with knowing eyes. Glad to hear it. Got some news from town, thought you'd want to know right away. What is it? Hunter asked, leading the horses toward the barn. That Morgan fellow, Willow's father, Frank said, glancing at her. Seems he got into some trouble before leaving town. Tried to cheat at cards at the Silverton Saloon. Barkeeper said they found him this morning behind the building, beaten pretty badly. Doc's looking after him, but it doesn't look good. Willow felt the blood drain from her face. Despite everything, Thomas Morgan was still her father. Is he going to die? She asked, her voice barely audible. Frank shrugged. Hard to say. Doc Jenkins was just arriving when I left town. But he took a severe beating, broken ribs. Maybe worse. Hunter's hand came to rest on Willow's shoulder. Do you want to go to town? See him? The question caught Willow off guard. After everything her father had done, after the way he had treated her, Hunter was still offering to take her to his bedside. The kindness of it nearly undid her. I don't know, she said honestly. Part of me feels I should, but another part. She couldn't finish the thought. You don't have to decide right now, Hunter assured her. Why don't you rest for a bit? We can talk more at supper. Grateful for the reprieve, Willow retreated to her room, her mind and heart in turmoil. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to sort through her conflicting emotions. Her father had been cruel, had made her life a misery, had forced her to sleep with pigs rather than under his roof. Yet he was the only family she had left. Could she really turn her back on him now when he might be dying? And what of Hunter? His offer still hung in the air between them, not explicitly stated, but clear nonetheless. A future together, building something meaningful on this beautiful land. Could she accept that future while her past remained unresolved? A soft knock on her door roused her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Hunter entered, his expression concerned. "I've been thinking," he said without preamble. "If you want to see your father, we should leave soon. It's a few hours' ride to town, and it will be dark before long." Willow looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "After what he did to me, why would you help me go to him?" Hunter sat beside her on the bed, taking her hand in his. "Because whatever he did, he's still your father. And because I know you, Willow Morgan. You're not the kind of person who could live with yourself if you didn't at least try to make peace, even if he doesn't deserve it." His understanding of her character, so accurate and so accepting, brought fresh tears to her eyes. "You're right," she admitted. "I need to see him, even if it's just to say goodbye." Hunter nodded. "Then we'll go. Frank can manage things here for a day or two." An hour later, they were on the road to town, riding side by side. Hunter had insisted on bringing Willow's carpetbag with her few possessions, just in case, though neither of them spoke of what those contingencies might be. The journey passed mostly in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached Pinewood in the fading light of late afternoon, Willow felt a growing apprehension. She hadn't been to town since she was a child, accompanying her mother on rare shopping trips. And now she was returning to confront her dying father, the man who had made her last years a living nightmare. The town was larger than she remembered, with several new buildings indicating growth spurred by the coming railroad. Hunter led them directly to the doctor's office, a small whitewashed building near the center of town. "Wait here," he said, helping her dismount. "Let me make sure he's still, that he's able to have visitors." Willow nodded gratefully, smoothing her dress and trying to prepare herself for whatever awaited inside. Hunter returned a few minutes later, his expression grave. "He's alive," he confirmed, "but in bad shape. Doctor says he's been asking for you." Surprise flickered across Willow's face. "For me?" Hunter nodded. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Willow considered the offer, then shook her head. "No. This is something I need to do alone." With a deep breath, she entered the doctor's office. A gray-haired man with kind eyes met her in the small waiting area. "Miss Morgan? I'm Dr. Jenkins. Your father is through here." He led her to a small room at the back of the building. The figure on the bed was almost unrecognizable, swollen, bruised, with bandages covering much of his face and chest. But the eyes that opened at her approach were unmistakably her father's. "Willow." His voice was a rasp, barely audible. "Yes, father. It's me." She moved to stand beside the bed, uncertain what to do or say. "Didn't think you'd come," he mumbled. "After everything." Willow remained silent, waiting for whatever he had to say. Thomas Morgan coughed weakly, and she saw blood stain the bandage at his mouth. "I'm dying, girl," he said bluntly. "Doc won't say it, but I know. Can feel it." "I'm sorry," Willow said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Not for what he'd done to her, but for the waste of a life that could have been different. Her father's hand, bruised and swollen, moved slightly on the coverlet. After a moment's hesitation, Willow placed her own hand near it, not touching, but close enough. "Wasn't always like this," Thomas muttered. "Before your mother died. I loved her, more than anything." "I know," Willow acknowledged softly. Her mother had loved him too, had defended him even when his temper flared, had seen something in him worth salvaging. After she was gone, I couldn't look at you without seeing her. He continued, each word clearly an effort. Hated you for that, for reminding me of what I'd lost. The admission wasn't an apology, but it was perhaps the closest thing to explanation she would ever receive. I understand, Willow said, though she wasn't sure she did, not really. That cowboy, Thomas said after a moment, the one who took you, he treating you right? The question took Willow by surprise. Yes, she answered honestly. He's been very kind. A shadow of something relief, perhaps, or regret crossed her father's battered face. Good, that's good. He closed his eyes, seeming to gather strength. Got something to tell you. Important. Willow leaned closer. What is it, father? The money, he whispered. From the railroad. It's yours. Confusion creased Willow's brow. What do you mean? Put it in an account. At the bank here. In your name. Each phrase was punctuated by a labored breath. Didn't spend it. Couldn't after what I did to you. Shock rendered Willow momentarily speechless. Her father had sold their ranch, yes, but he hadn't squandered the money as she'd assumed he would. Instead, he'd set it aside for her. Why? She finally managed to ask. Thomas Morgan's eyes opened again, meeting hers directly for perhaps the first time in years. Too late to make things right, he said, but not too late to do one thing right. A coughing fit seized him, more violent than before. When it passed, he lay back, exhausted. Bank manager has the papers. Myers. Tell him I sent you. Willow felt tears welling in her eyes, not for the money, which meant little to her, but for this small, final act of something approaching paternal care. Thank you, she said softly. Her father's eyes were already closing, his breathing becoming more labored. Go now, he whispered. Be happy, Willow, like your mother wanted. As she stood to leave, Thomas made one final effort. Forgive me, he breathed, so quietly she almost missed it. Willow paused at the door, looking back at the broken man who had caused her so much pain. I'll try, she promised, and meant it. Outside, she found Hunter waiting patiently, his face etched with concern. How is he? He asked as she emerged. Dying, Willow said simply, but at peace, I think. She told him about the money, still trying to process this unexpected development herself. Hunter listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. What do you want to do? He asked when she had finished. The question hung in the air between them, laden with meaning that extended far beyond the immediate situation. Willow looked up at the man who had changed her life in the span of a week, who had rescued her from a life of misery, who had shown her kindness when she'd forgotten such a thing existed, who had awakened feelings in her she hadn't known she was capable of. I want to stay with you, she said, the words emerging with a certainty that surprised her. If your offer still stands. Hunter's face transformed with a joy so pure it took her breath away. It stands, he confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. It will always stand, Willow. He reached for her then, drawing her into an embrace that felt like coming home. Over his shoulder, Willow saw the sun setting over the distant mountains, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. A new day would dawn tomorrow, the first day of a life she had chosen freely, with a man who saw her value and treated her with respect. Let's find a hotel for the night, Hunter suggested, reluctantly releasing her. We can visit the bank in the morning, then head home. Home. The word echoed in Willow's heart with a sweetness she had almost forgotten existed. She had found her home not in a place, but in a person. In Hunter Davis, with his quiet strength and boundless kindness, she had found something worth building a life around. Yes, she agreed, taking his offered hand. Let's go home. Chapter 6. New Beginnings. Thomas Morgan died peacefully in his sleep that night. Dr. Jenkins sent word to the hotel where Willow and Hunter had taken rooms, and they returned to the doctor's office early the next morning to make arrangements. He wasn't in pain at the end, the doctor assured Willow as they stood in the small room where her father's body lay, now cleaned and prepared for burial. Whatever demons drove him in life, I believe he found some measure of peace before he passed. Willow nodded, her emotions a complex tangle she couldn't fully unravel. Relief was there, yes, but also sadness for what might have been for the father he could have been if grief and alcohol hadn't twisted him into something unrecognizable. "Thank you for your care of him, Doctor," she said simply. Hunter stood silently beside her, his solid presence a comfort she was increasingly grateful for. After making arrangements with the local undertaker for a simple burial the following day, they walked together to the Pinewood Bank. Mr. Myers, the bank manager, was expecting them. "Miss Morgan," he greeted her, rising from behind his desk. "Your father spoke to me last week about setting up an account in your name. Please accept my condolences on your loss." Willow thanked him, then listened as he explained the details of her inheritance. The railroad had paid $2,000 for the Morgan property, a substantial sum that, properly managed, could provide security for years to come. "Of course, the money is entirely yours to do with as you see fit," Myers concluded. "Your father was most insistent on that point." Hunter, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "Mr. Myers, would it be possible to transfer a portion of these funds to purchase additional land adjacent to my ranch? I believe the Patterson tract might be available." Myers nodded. "Certainly, Mr. Davis. If Miss Morgan agrees, of course." Both men turned to Willow, who found herself momentarily overwhelmed by the situation. Just days ago, she had been sleeping in a pig pen, with no possessions to her name beyond a carpetbag of meager belongings. Now she was a woman of means, being consulted on land purchases as if her opinion mattered. "I would need to know more about this land," she said carefully, "and what you intend to do with it." A smile flickered across Hunter's face, approval warming his eyes at her prudent response. "The Patterson land borders mine to the east," he explained. "It has excellent water rights and would allow us to expand the herd significantly. As for what we would do with it, that's something I hoped we might decide together." The implication in his words wasn't lost on Willow or the banker, whose eyebrows rose slightly. "Perhaps you two would like some privacy to discuss these matters?" Myers suggested diplomatically. Once alone in the banker's office, Hunter turned to Willow. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," he said. "I should have discussed this with you privately first." Willow shook her head. "You didn't overstep. But Hunter, this money, it changes things. I don't want you to think I'm staying with you because I have no other options now." Hunter took her hands in his. "I would never think that," he assured her. "Willow, when I invited you to stay at the ranch, it wasn't out of pity or charity. It was because I saw something special in you from the first moment, a strength, a goodness that all your father's cruelty couldn't diminish." His grip tightened slightly. "I'm falling in love with you, Willow Morgan. Money or no money, that doesn't change." The simple declaration stole Willow's breath. "Love," she echoed, the word foreign on her tongue. "Yes, love," Hunter confirmed, his blue eyes intent on hers. "I know it's fast, and I know you have every reason to be cautious. But I'm not your father, Willow. I don't want to own you or control you. I want to build something with you, a partnership, a life where we both have a voice." Tears pricked at Willow's eyes. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted softly. "But it scares me. I've never felt this way before." Hunter's smile was gentle. "It scares me too," he confessed. "But I think the best things in life often do." He released her hands and stepped back slightly, giving her space. So, about the land and everything else. What do you want, Willow? Not what you think I want or what you think you should want. What do you truly want for your future? It was perhaps the most important question anyone had ever asked her, and Willow gave it the consideration it deserved. What did she want? Security, yes. Purpose, definitely. But beyond those basics, I want a home, she said finally. Not just a place to live, but somewhere I belong. I want work that matters, that builds something lasting. She met his gaze directly. And I want you, Hunter Davis. I want to see if what's growing between us can become the kind of love that lasts a lifetime. The joy that spread across Hunter's face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Then let's make it happen, he said. Starting with this land purchase, if you agree. It's a sound investment regardless of other developments. Willow nodded, a smile tugging at her own lips. I agree. And perhaps we should discuss those other developments further, after my father's burial tomorrow. They returned to Mr. Myers and initiated the process for purchasing the Patterson land, with the papers to be drawn up over the next few days. Afterward, they visited Mrs. Peterson at the general store to explain that Willow would not be taking the position after all. Can't say I'm surprised, the older woman said with a knowing glance between them. Hunter Davis has had that look about him since you walked in. Well, my dear, you've made a fine choice. He's one of the good ones. They spent the remainder of the day making arrangements for Thomas Morgan's burial and settling Willow's affairs in town. By unspoken agreement, they took separate rooms again at the hotel that night, though they shared a quiet dinner in the hotel restaurant. I've been thinking, Hunter said as they lingered over coffee, about what happens when we return to the ranch. Willow looked at him expectantly. What about it? I want to do this properly, he said, his expression earnest. I don't want there to be any gossip that might hurt you. So I thought perhaps Frank could move into the main house for a while as a sort of chaperone until... He trailed off, color rising in his cheeks. Until what? Willow prompted, though she had a fair idea of what he was trying to say. Hunter met her gaze directly. Until we're married, he said simply. If that's what you want. The directness of his statement sent a flush of warmth through Willow. Are you proposing to me, Hunter Davis? Not officially, he replied with a small smile. When I do that, it will be with a ring and perhaps not in a hotel dining room. But I am making my intentions clear. I want to court you properly, Willow Morgan. And if you'll have me, I want to make you my wife. Willow's heart seemed to expand in her chest. I would like that, she said softly. Both the courtship and the rest. Hunter's smile broadened. Good. That's good. They returned to the ranch 2 days later, after laying Thomas Morgan to rest in the small Pinewood cemetery. Frank, who had been informed of the developments via telegram, greeted them with his usual taciturn manner, though Willow thought she detected a gleam of approval in his weathered face. True to Hunter's word, Frank moved into the spare bedroom in the main house, providing the propriety that frontier society, for all its roughness, still expected. The arrangement allowed Hunter and Willow to begin their courtship under relatively conventional circumstances, despite the unconventional beginning of their relationship. Spring deepened into summer as they settled into a new rhythm of life on the ranch. The garden Willow had planted flourished under her care, providing fresh vegetables for their table. She took over much of the household management, freeing Hunter and the ranch hands to focus on the expanding herd and the improvements to the newly acquired Patterson land. In the evenings, they would often sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular colors. Sometimes they talked of practical matters, the price of beef, the progress of the railroad construction, the new barn Hunter planned to build. Other times they shared deeper thoughts, hopes, fears, memories both painful and precious. My mother would have liked you, Hunter said one evening as they sat side by side, his arm around her shoulders. She always said I needed someone who would challenge me, not just agree with everything I said. Willow laughed. I certainly do that. Yes, you do, Hunter agreed, squeezing her gently. Like yesterday, when you convinced me the vegetable garden needed to be twice as large for winter storage. You were right, by the way. I usually am, Willow teased, earning a chuckle from Hunter. And modest too, he retorted, dropping a kiss on the top of her head. One of your many charms. Their courtship progressed with a sweetness Willow had never imagined possible. Hunter was patient and respectful, never pressing for more physical intimacy than she was comfortable with. Their kisses grew more passionate as summer wore on, but he always pulled back before things went too far, his respect for her evident in every action. One evening in late August, Hunter suggested they ride out to the cottonwood grove by the stream, the special place he had shown her months earlier. They arrived as the sun was beginning to set, the golden light filtering through the leaves creating a dappled pattern on the ground. It's even more beautiful than I remembered, Willow said as Hunter helped her down from her horse. He nodded, but his expression was tense, almost nervous. I've been coming here to think since I bought this land, he said, leading her to a fallen log where they could sit beside the stream. When I have a big decision to make, this is where I come to clear my head. Willow looked at him curiously. And what decision brings us here today? Instead of answering directly, Hunter reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Willow's breath caught in her throat as he opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. It was my mother's, Hunter explained, his voice rough with emotion. She left it to me, said I should give it to the woman who captured my heart the way she captured my father's. He took Willow's hand in his. Willow Morgan, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light and laughter back into my home and my heart. I can't imagine a future without you in it. He paused, taking a deep breath. Will you marry me? Be my partner, my love, my wife. Tears of joy filled Willow's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Hunter Davis, I will marry you. His face transformed with happiness as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Hunter gathered her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the love and promise his words had held. When they finally parted, both breathless, Hunter rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Willow Morgan, he said softly, more than I ever thought possible. And I love you, she replied, the words coming easily now, the fear that had once accompanied them long since vanished. With all my heart. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Pinewood, with Frank serving as Hunter's best man and Abigail Peterson standing up for Willow. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, witnessed by the ranch hands and a few townspeople who had come to know and respect the couple. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Hunter looked down at Willow with such love in his eyes that she felt it like a physical warmth enveloping her. Hello, Mrs. Davis, he whispered as he bent to kiss her. Hello, my husband, she replied against his lips, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such happiness. The celebration afterward at the ranch was a joyous affair, with food, music, and dancing lasting well into the night. When the last guest had departed and Frank tactfully announced he would be moving back to the bunkhouse, now that things are proper, Hunter led Willow into their home, truly theirs now, in every sense. In the privacy of their bedroom, Hunter's tenderness brought tears to Willow's eyes. My love, he whispered as he helped her remove the simple white dress she had worn for their wedding. My beautiful wife. The endearment, spoken with such reverence, healed something deep within Willow that she hadn't even realized was still wounded. From girl to my love, the journey had been long and at times painful, but worth every step to reach this moment. Their first night as husband and wife was a revelation for Willow, a joining of bodies and souls that transcended her limited understanding of what physical love could be. Hunter was gentle and patient, guiding her through unfamiliar territory with a care that brought her to heights of pleasure she had never imagined possible. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the soft darkness, Willow traced the strong line of Hunter's jaw with her fingertips. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "For seeing me," she replied simply. "When everyone else looked away, you saw me. You gave me your bed when my father made me sleep with the pigs. You called me my love, when I'd forgotten what it felt like to be valued." Hunter gathered her closer, his arms strong and secure around her. "I will always see you, Willow Davis," he promised, "and I will spend every day of our lives making sure you never forget how precious you are to me." As they drifted towards sleep, Willow felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. The girl who had once slept among pigs now lay in the arms of a man who treasured her above all else. Her father's cruelty had shaped her past, but it would no longer dictate her future. With Hunter by her side, Willow embraced the possibilities of a new beginning, grounded in love, respect, and the hope of a brighter tomorrow.